Hi everyone. In the previous videos, we went ahead and created our sign up and our login form. Now in this video, we're going to go ahead and sign up our users. But before we do that, I'm going to be making use of form validation. So as you can see right now, our forms can submit data. For example, if we input this, we can input a username such as this, then we can also put some email and some passwords like how you can see this. So right now, when you sign up, we see that our form has been submitted. And when you inspect element, you can go to our console and then we see that our data has been logged successfully. However, what we want to do in this case is to validate so that we can be able to pass in the correct data within our inputs. So we're going to be making use of a third-party tool called a React Hook Form. Now, this is the website for React Hook Form, and React Hook Form is a tool that enables us to carry out validation in a way that's simple, as you're going to see in this video. I'm going to head over to our Visual Studio Code, and within our code, the first thing is going to be to install React Hook Form. So I'm going to pull up a terminal, and then I'm going to just open up a new terminal. And what I'll do is to just sit into the client. That's where our front-end project is. Then I'll install, actually I'll just go to the get started section. I'll copy this command. So when I copy this command, simply going to paste it within here. And this is going to install our React Hook form. Now that our React Hook form has been installed, we are going to go ahead and look into how to validate our form. I'm going to first close this. And React Hook Form provides for us a hook that helps us to validate our forms. So I'm going to import that hook. So I'm going to say import. So it provides for us a hook called useForm. And this useForm hook is from React Hook Form. What this hook form does is to help us to register our inputs with that hook. And when we register our inputs with that hook, we can be able to specify the simple validation rules. So I'll head back to the documentation briefly. And just like you can see, we can import the following. So we can import register, handle submit, watch, form state, as you're going to see. So I'm going to go back right here. And within here, what I'll actually do is to come. So I'll come and first create that hook. So I'll say first, and I'll first destructure everything. So I'll say is equal to use form. So once I do this, I'm going to get the following. So I'll get the register function, and then I'll get the watch. So the watch function helps us to watch our inputs as input data into them, just like we're going to see. So we can also import handle submit, which is a function that's simply going to help us to handle our form when we submit it. And then we can also get an error. We can get our error. So our errors are usually within our form state. So I'm going to make this, and then we shall get simply the errors object. Now after doing this, the next thing is going to be to register our inputs to work with our use form. So I'm going to save this and then come down here. So you see that in the previous videos, we had to specify the value, the name, and the onChange handler. Now with React Hook Form, it makes it so easy. Just like we can just register our input and then be able to specify the simple validation rules that you are going to use. For example, I'm going to first remove this, and all I'll do is to just specify an object, and within this object I'll just register our input, and then we specify the simple validation rules that we want for each input. So to do that, we shall use this syntax, and then what we shall do is to say register. So we shall register our input. And then when we register our input, what we're going to do is the first thing we're going to specify the name of our input. So to do that, we put a string, just like you can see, you register the name of your input, which is a string, and then you register whatever options. For example, the validation rules. So in this case, what you're going to do, But since this is going to be for our username, we shall just simply call this our username. And then within the next argument, we pass in the simple validation rules, just like you can see here. You can pass it whether it's required or the max length and whatever we may need. So let me try to refer to our backend so that we get to know exactly what we want for our validation. So I'm going to head back to our backend code. I'm going to go within our main.py. Actually, it's within our, so in this case it's going to be our authentication. Actually, let me just go to the models. So just within here we have our username that's having a max length of 25 characters. So here I can be able to specify like this. So I create an object, and the first thing we shall do is to say required. So I can pass in the required and then set this to true. So basically this means that our input is required and we always have to put in data. So we cannot leave it empty. So another thing we can specify is our max length. So we can say max length, and then we can specify that our max length in this case is 25. So just like this, we can be able to specify the name of our input as well as the validation rules we have for that input. So you can do the same for the other inputs. For example, we can change our email. So I'm going to change this. So I can come simply here and then do the same thing, create an object. Within that object, I'll just actually register. So simply register our input. So what I'll do is to register our input. So in this case, I'm going to say email and then specify the validation rules for our email. So you can have something like so you can pass in the validation rules. For example, in this case, you can say required is true, and you can even pass in a pattern in case you're using something like regex to validate your form. So you can even specify a pattern. However, in this case, I'm not going to use a pattern, so I'm going to leave it out. So what I'm going to actually do is refer to our backend code. So in this case, we have our email with the max length of 80. So what I'll do here is to just say that max length. So in this case, our max length is going to be equal to 80. Now, after doing this, I'm going to simply come back to our password as well. So within our password, I'll do the same thing. So I'll just come right here and remove these. So when I remove this, I'll simply do the same. So I'll put our register function and then specify the name of our input. So in this case, I'll say password. And after doing password, then I'll simply give the various validation rules. For example, we shall say required, and then our required is going to be, in this case, our required is going to be true. So here, the interesting thing is we can be able to specify the main password we may want. So for example, we can say that our main password, so we can say min length, and then we can say that can specify the kind of password we need. In this case, we may say the our min length is going to be 8. And that means that for every password someone will be required to input within our inputs, they will require to give a password of min length 8, just like the shortest password can be 8 characters. So what I'll do is just simply copy this and then I'll come and paste it in here. I'll just change the name of our input. So what I'll do is to paste it in here. So let me first tidy this up. So I'm going to first tidy this up. So I'll first format it, make it look a little bit tidy. So then I'll come back here. So what I did is to just copy this. So I'll change this to confirm password. So I'll just confirm and then call this confirm password. So we shall have the same rules. Now the beauty with this is we can have another property called the validate property. So the validate property helps us to kind of validate to create our custom validation rule. So for example, we can be able to have an errors on submitting when we have our password not matching our confirmed password. So to do this, what I'm going to actually do is, let's first handle our form in this case. So just like you can see, in the previous video, we added our on click equals submit form. Now, just like you can see at the top of our code, let me first close this. At the top of our code, we imported handle submit from React hook form or from the useForms hook. So to do this, I'll come simply just here. And what I'll do is to change this. So I'll say on click, and then I'll say handle submit. So I'll say handle submit, and then pass in whatever function is going to help us to handle the submission of our form. In this case, we can say on submit. So when I go up, I can be able to see that we already have our own submit form, our submit form function. So now I just have to remove this and then pass in the data. So in this case, I can simply pass in the data as a parameter, and then what I'll do is to simply console log this data. So I'll just come right here and say console.log, then we simply go to console log the data. Now what this does is to console log an object containing whatever data is within our inputs. So I'm going to save. Actually, this is submit form, so I'll just simply come here and instead of on submit, I'll change this to submit form. So I'm going to save this. So let's try to be able to see. So now what we want to do is to console log our values so that we see our data that we are inputting within this form. And that's the beauty with it. So I can be able to use the watch function. So to do that, I'll just come and say console.log. So then I'll say console.log watch. Then I specify the name of the field I want to watch. So in this case, I'm going to say that I want to watch, let's say, the username. After doing this, I'm going to save and head back to our client. So I'll go back to our React app on the front end, try to refresh. Now let's try to see. So here we have a lot of undefined, but let's unused variables, but let's try to ignore this for now. We're going to change this. So what I can actually do is to just remove these statements. When I remove them, we were using React hooks, but in this case, I'm not going to use them. So what I'm going to do is to save. And when I save, I'm going to simply refresh. So right here, we have a lot of unused, just like the alerts that you shall see in a second. So let's try to console log our data. So what I'll do is to input. So I'll input a username, I'll input an email, and then I'll input, actually what I'll do is to input an email. So I'll input valid email, then let's say I'll input a valid password. So for example, input a password, then I'll input a password. So when I submit this form, you see that now it is console logging an object containing our data. Now the beauty with React Hook form is that it helps us to do this with less code. Just like you saw in the previous video, we actually wrote a lot of code to simply console log this. So now we can be able to get to console log our data and then be able to log into the console. Now what we can actually do is to do some error. So we want to show our errors on the front end in case we have errors on our inputs. So to do that, what I'm actually going to do is head over to our Visual Studio Code. I'm going to head over to our Visual Studio Code, and as you see that we imported form state and then the errors object. So we can be able to access the errors for each input we created that we registered with this use form hook. So to do that, what we can actually do is to just simply come just below here. All you can do is to specify the errors that that field has. So for example, we can say that in this case, we can say that errors dot, then we access the name of that input. So in this case, we can have errors dot username, and then we specify that for that we shall simply create a span, so we can actually add a span, and then the span will have, let's say, username. Username is required. So once we have this, we can even style it up. So I can say style going to be equal to. So we can add some style in here. So what I can actually do is add a style as, so I can say style color is equal to red or color. And say, so what I can actually do is to say color, then I pass in red. So this is going to be color red. So after doing this, I'm going to save. And when we head over to our client, so in here we can have a form that we submit data but does not reset. So let's try to pass in an empty username. So when you pass in an empty username, we can see that it shows us an error that username is required. So this is the beauty with React Hook Form, is that it helps us to validate our forms using less code. So just like you can see here, I said watch, and then it's console logging the value of our username. So let's try to input. So whenever I input, just like here, I said console log watch username. So I can do the same for our email as well. So I can say console dot log and watch. In this case, I can say email. So this is going to be our email. So I can do the same thing for our password. This is going to be our password. So I just specify the name of the input that I registered. For example, when I said register confirm password, so I'll do the same thing for the confirm password. Simply come and say console.log. In this case, I'll say watch, and then this is going to be confirm. So this will be confirm password. So when I save this, every time we shall input our form, so I'm going to refresh. So we see that now our form does not reset or does not clear our input. So we're going to import a simple function from React Hook Form called the reset function. So to do that, I'll simply come right in here, just like we imported this. So I'll just import reset. And when I import reset, it's just a matter of console logging the data and then setting. When we reset that, we can see that our form can clear in this case. So let's try to actually input. So when I input a username, for example, I input, so you can see that now it's console logging our input. So if I input my username, it's going to console log it. If I input an email, it's going to console log it. If I began to put a password within my inputs, it's also going to console log it. So if I submit, you see that our form has been submitted, and then we are console logging our data that is within our form. So what we can do is to actually check if our error handling is working. So if I submit a form without a username, we see that username is required. So I'm going to go ahead and do the same thing for the various fields that we've created. So to do that, I'm simply going to add some styling. So what I'll actually do is to just actually put a simple line break here. So that's to space things up. When I save, you see now our validator is here, but then so space. So what I actually do is to simply put it within our form group. So what I'll do is to actually copy it. So I'm going to actually copy this and put it within our form group. So simply do this and come just after our form control and put our error. In this case, if we are having our error within our form group, which looks nicer. So I'm going to do the same thing for our email, our password, and our confirm password. In this case, what I'll do is to simply copy this. In this case, what I'll do is to actually come, so I'll do the same thing for the user for the email. So instead of saying errors.username, in this case, I'm going to say errors.email, and then for example, we can say email is required. So in this case, I'll say email is required. However, just like I said, you can use regex to validate your email, and then you can pass in the error specific to validating the email, such as email is invalid or something of that sort. So we can do the same thing for the password. So in this case, if I put in, I can say use errors dot password. So it seems like I'm having an error here, and it's because I pasted it within the form control. Let me put it outside the form control. So I'll do the same thing for our confirm password right here. So what I'll do in this case is to specify that this is going to be for our confirm password. So here what I can actually do is say a confirm password is required. So simply pass that in. So I'll say confirm password is required, and I'll also do the same thing for the password. So I'll come right in here. Actually, this is for the password. Let's try to see here. We have username. So this is our confirm password. So this is our password. So right in here, we have confirm password, and right here where we actually pasted, this is where we're going to access our password. So to do that, I'm simply going to say user errors.password. This is going to be errors.password, and then we shall say password is required. So when I save this and head over to our client, we can see that it's now giving us errors for all the fields. However, we can also add the same errors. For example, if we have max length exceeded, we can even say that this should be of this length or something of that sort. So I'll come and try to do such validations. For example, where we have the max length equals to 25, I'll just come right in here and I'll add another error. So I'll just add a line break here and separate the two errors. What I'll actually do is to add a line break, and then after the line break, what I'll do is to say errors, then dot. Now access the field, which is username, and then what I'll do is to use this syntax. So then I'll specify the type error. So in this case, we want to validate for the max length. So I'll pass in the error as the max length as a string. So that is the rule by which we are validating. So if our type is equal to max length, and what we're going to actually do is to say that our error is going to be, so we are going to use this syntax, then we say that our error in this case is going to be, for example, just like we did for the previous examples. So in this case, what I'll do is to actually say shall just have a span, actually whole thing. So what I'll do is to just copy this right here and paste it in here. So when I paste it in here, instead of validating for, like just like we said, for the username is required, what I'll validate for is the max length. So I can say a max length, max characters. So I can say max characters should be. In this case, I say max character should be. So for example, we have max length 25. So in this case, I can say max character should be 25. So I'll do the same thing for the remaining inputs. So I'm going to simply copy this and then go validate our email. So I'll do the same thing. I'll add a line break here, then come right in here. So come right in here and basically change this. So this time we have to validate for the type of email. So in this case, it's going to be errors.email and the type max length, and then specify the kind of error. So in this case, max length is going to be 80 characters. So then in this case, what I can actually do, I'll do the same thing. So I'll just come and copy this. So after copying this, I'll simply come just below the password, then paste the error. In this case, I'll access the input, the error for the input of password, and then here we having our min length that we are validating equal to 8. So in this case, we can come right here and say min length. So I'll just specify min length just in here, so min length, and then here I'll say min characters instead of max characters. So I can say min characters should be 8. So right in here, I can also do the same thing for the confirm password. So I'll just basically paste it in here. So do the same thing. So this will be errors dot password and then the type. So I'll specify that in this case we're checking for our min length, and then I'll do the same thing for min character. So in this case I should say min character should be 8. So hoping that if this is fine, I'll go back to our front end right in here. So it's going to show us the different errors that we have. So when I kind of input, so I'll try to input. So for example, I'll add a username, and when I add an email, I'll add an email here. I'll also add a password. So in this case, let's say our password is going to be, so if I say one character, it shows you that the main character should be 8. And let's say if I input characters that are more than 8, we see that now our password is more than 8 characters and the errors wouldn't appear. So I'll do the same thing for the confirm password, and then we shall see that the errors are not also appearing. So in this video, we have learned how to validate our forms with React Hook Form. So in the next video, we are going to simply go ahead and sign up our user. Thank you for watching this video, and if you feel you've learned from this video, please go ahead and leave a like, and don't forget to subscribe to the channel for more content. Thank you for watching, and see you in the next video. Bye.